Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 10 Part 11 based on novel. So let's start. A thin ray of blood-red light shot across the sky. Subsequently, it seemed to tear apart space and disappear within it in a flash. At this moment, everyone's eyes were glued to Shu Shong's gradually stiffening face. They could see life rapidly disappearing from the latter's scarlet eyes and the lingering horror within them. How can it be? Blood flowed down Shu Shong's forehead as the world in front of him began to turn dark. His unsteady gaze saw the lifted hand of a young man in the distance. Even at this moment, he was unable to accept the truth. Lin Dong had actually tore apart the energy field that he was using to advance to the Samsara stage and forcibly delivered the fatal blow. The energy field from earlier was something that even an expert at the peak of the profound death stage like himself would not be able to break into. Yet, Lin Dong's attack had managed to shatter it with ease. What was that attack? This fellow was still holding back her. The scene before Shu Shong's eyes rapidly turned to darkness. His body swaggered and finally collapsed onto the ground with a thud in front of those many pairs of extremely shocked eyes. "I'm really unresigned." After these last words sounded within his heart, Shu Shong's consciousness completely disappeared. A mighty demon commander had died. The entire deep lightning mountain had become completely quiet at this moment. A breeze blew over, but it was unable to blow away the frozen atmosphere on the messy mountain. Shu Shong was dead. Many pairs of eyes gazed at the figure that had collapsed as their pupils expanded slightly. This was the demon commander of Deep Lightning Mountain. Has he really been finished off by that human young man called Lin Dong in such a fashion? How did this happen? Several people mumbled. This was after all one of the 8 great demon commanders of the Beast War region. Although Shui Shong's strength was not outstanding amongst the 8 great demon commanders, he was still a demon commander who ruled a great territory. There were hardly anyone in the Beast War region who could defeat him. Everyone could imagine just how frightening a commotion this matter would stir within the Beast War region when the news spread. The entire mountain was completely quiet. Fresh blood was still dripping from Lin Dong's fingertips as he slowly lowered his hands. His face appeared exceptionally pale. The earlier attack was the fusion of the power of 2 ancestral symbols in his body and a tremendous amount of essence blood. Hence, it was terrifying exhausting for him. However, Lin Dong had no choice. Although Lin Dong was aware that allowing Shu Shong to devour his brother would only give him a 30% chance of successfully advancing into the Samsara stage, Lin Dong did not dare to take such a risk. Once Shu Shong successfully advanced, the situation would be completely different. Although the Lin Dong duo would not die, it would be extremely difficult for them to achieve their objective. "Big brother, you alright?" Little Flame was alarmed when he saw Lin Dong's complexion and hurriedly asked. Lin Dong gently shook his head. He was just about to speak when his face suddenly turned cold. He abruptly lifted his head and saw a light figure rushing over from far away. The latter was extending his hand in an attempt to grab Shu Shong's body. "You are causing death." Lin Dong let out a cold cry. He curled 2 fingers and was about to thrust them again. That light figure had clearly witnessed Lin Dong's extremely terrifying finger attack from earlier. Hence, he was frightened upon witnessing this scene and his forward-charging body stopped. At this moment, Little Flame also reacted. The latter let out a furious roar as he charged forward and a ferocious palm wind ruthlessly smashed towards the light figure. Bang! A fierce wind unfurled while Little Flame hurriedly took a couple of steps back. The light figure was revealed to be Qinsha. Humph! Lin Dong's eyes were icy. A thought flashed through his mind and the sky-devouring corpse hurried over. It appeared in front of Qinsha and blocked him. "Do you plan to avenge Shu Shong?" Lin Dong stared at Qinsha and slowly questioned. Qinsha laughed dryly upon hearing this. His eyes were filled with wariness and fear as he looked at Lin Dong. Shu Shong's death was also a huge shock to him. Since his strength was similar to Shu Shong, it meant that Lin Dong had the power to kill him. Moreover, there was still that sky-devouring corpse that gave him a big headache. Both he and Xu Shong did not have much of a friendship to begin with. The reason he had helped was due to the generous terms Xu Shong had offered. However, Xu Shong was already dead and there was no longer any meaning in that transaction. It was pointless for him to become enemies with this troublesome Lin Dong. What is young brother Lin Dong saying? There is no deep friendship between Xu Shong and I have no reason to avenge him. Qin Shi laughed. His eyes flickered as he glanced at Xu Shong's corpse and said, "It is just that I wish to conduct a transaction with young brother Lin Dong. Why don't you give this corpse of Xu Shong's to me?" Lin Dong's eyes narrowed as he stared at Qin Shi. The latter smilingly looked at him. His face appeared extremely cunning. "I'm sorry. I'm afraid that I cannot accept this request." Lin Dong smiled faintly. The other half of the essence blood inheritance that Little Flame needed was in Xu Shong's body. Even though the essence blood inheritance had been refined by Xu Shong, Lin Dong had the means to force it out. Qin Shi's expression altered slightly as he laughed dryly. "Young brother Lin Dong, why don't you give the matter some thought? It is never be a bad thing to befriend another person in this beast war region. Does brother Qin Shi not wish to befriend me?" Lin Dong asked with a half smile. The corners of Qin Shi's mouth twitched. He subsequently glanced at the sky-devouring corpse, which was less than a dozen steps from him. After which, he vigilantly stared at Little Flame. His body finally relaxed slowly as he spoke in a somewhat dry voice. "How can that be possible? This king is only too happy to become acquainted with brother Lin Dong in this fight." Lin Dong smiled. He waved his sleeve and the burning sky cauldron flew out and sucked Xu Shong's corpse into it. Qin Shi could only quietly sigh upon seeing this as disappointment flashed across his eyes. Lin Dong caught sight of this expression and felt a little baffled in his heart. Did this Qin Shi also know about the other half of the essence blood inheritance in Xu Shong's body? However, Qin Shi was part of the lion tribe. It was impossible for him to perfectly absorb the essence blood inheritance even if he managed to obtain it. The originally tensed atmosphere on Deep Lightning Mountain suddenly relaxed following the disappearance of Xu Shong's corpse. Chen Tong and the rest exchanged glances upon seeing this. Soon after, they knelt on one knee. Some of the guards of Deep Lightning Mountain behind them hesitated for a moment before kneeling while feeling a little lost. Clearly, Chen Tong's 5-men group had substantial influence in Deep Lightning Mountain. "General Yang, please become the commander." A low and deep cry spread within Deep Lightning Mountain. The guards of Deep Lightning Mountain also echoed after them and a thunderous cry reverberated across the sky. Many people from Deep Lightning Mountain were stunned as they watched this scene with some anxiety. Was Deep Lightning Mountain changing owners? Meng Shan and General Tian Yi were also somewhat panicking. However, the death of Xu Shong had made them lose all of their courage. Neither of them dared to voice any objection. Rumble. A rumbling sound suddenly appeared from below Deep Lightning Mountain at this moment. Soon after, everyone saw a metallic-like black torrent that gave off an earth-shaking ferocious aura as it swept over. It was the tiger-devouring army. "General Yang, please become the commander." The tiger-devouring army suddenly paused when it was still some distance from the top of the mountain. After which, they knelt with one knee on the ground. Their orderly cry was just like a tiger roar. Crash! Some of the still hesitating experts of Deep Lightning Mountain finally clenched their teeth and knelt along with the huge crowd when the aura of the tiger-devouring army swept over. "General Yang, please become the commander." Those leaders of the various factions located within the territory of Deep Lightning Mountain were also aware of the current situation after witnessing this scene. With Xu Shong's death, the only one in Deep Lightning Mountain who was most suitable to become the demon commander was Little Flame. Since they were unable to change this result, it was better to quickly establish a good relationship with this new demon commander. Otherwise, their lives would become a lot harder in future. Lin Dong watched the grand scene before him as a smile surfaced on his pale face. He was a human. Regardless of how strong he was, it was extremely difficult for these people from Deep Lightning Mountain to accept him as the new demon commander. Moreover, he did not like such a position to begin with. Hence, it was naturally best if this position could be taken by Little Flame. Therefore, he could only look towards Little Flame and nod. Little Flame hesitated for a moment upon seeing this. Finally, he agreed. Deep Lightning Mountain was a pretty good faction. It would be quite beneficial for them if he could take control of it. When they charged back to the Eastern Xian region in future, this would perhaps even become a relatively powerful trump card. Little Flame flew into the sky under the many watching eyes as his tiger eyes swept over the entire place. Finally, he looked towards Meng Shan and General Qian Yi. Will the two of you submit? The Meng Shan duo's expressions changed slightly upon hearing this. They hesitated for a moment under the countless needle-like gazes around them. Finally, they knelt with one knee. At this moment, they had lost all courage to resist. Little Flame nodded after seeing this. He looked towards Huan Miao, the only one left standing, and said, "You can leave if you do not wish to stay in Deep Lightning Mountain." Humph, how impressive. Huan Miao stared at the Hulk-like Little Flame and snorted softly. However, her face gradually reddened. Subsequently, she knelt with one knee on the ground without her usual haughty manner. What shocked Chen Tong and the rest the most was the fact that this woman had never acted so obediently back when Xu Song accepted her as a commander. At this very moment, the entire Deep Lightning Mountain had lost all resistance. Little Flame stood in the sky as his tiger eyes swept over the place. Finally, he waved his large hand, appearing a little imposing. His deep voice also resounded within Deep Lightning Mountain. Nothing will change in Deep Lightning Mountain. Everyone will hold the same position as before with the exception of the Demon Commander. Congratulations, Commander Yang. Countless people lowered their heads as an orderly and respectful cry reverberated across the land in a majestic fashion. The owner of Deep Lightning Mountain had finally changed amidst this mighty cry. The incident which took place on Deep Lightning Mountain spread across the entire Beast War region at an extremely frightening speed within 3 short days. The shock and awe caused by this news exceeded everyone's expectations. The entire Beast War region also erupted into an uproar as a result. After all, the death of a demon commander was no frequent occurrence in the Beast War region. Although Xu Song was not considered outstanding amongst the 8 great demon commanders, he was still a demon commander. Moreover, there were countless number of powerful individuals who attempted to challenge him over the years. However, they merely became a glowing dot in the halo above his head, allowing his reputation to grow and his strength to increase. However, this demon commander, who had held that title for over a decade, was suddenly killed. Moreover, it was not a powerful warrior from the Beast War region that killed him. Instead, it was a human. Hence, this news naturally caused quite a huge commotion as it spread. In fact, many powerful warriors felt bitter. A human actually dared to act so arrogantly in their Beast War region. However, this time around, no one tried to find trouble with Lin Dong like they did back when Lin Dong defeated Cao Ying. After all, powerful individuals who could kill a demon commander were rarefied existences in the Beast War region. Of course, this huge uproar naturally attracted the attention of those powerful factions in Beast War region, many of which were not inferior to Deep Lightning Mountain. Some people were eager to act, but they ultimately suppressed their desire. That was because the current demon commander of Deep Lightning Mountain was not a human. Instead, it was also a powerful demonic beast. It was clearly a wise decision for Lin Dong to ask Little Flame to take the position of demon commander. Although he was quite powerful, he had yet to reach the level whereby he could tower over everyone else. Therefore, he had to tone down a little in a place like this. After all, he was well aware that if he took the position of demon commander, not only will most powerful experts in Deep Lightning Mountain refuse to submit, but it was also likely that other demon commanders would lead their armies and invade Deep Lightning Mountain the next day. Nevertheless, Deep Lightning Mountain was clearly in the limelight during this period of time. Fortunately, there were no abrupt changes to Deep Lightning Mountain after its owner changed. Other than the fact that the demon commander changed, the Serene Mountain remained as peaceful as before. Following the flow of time, those pairs of eyes which were closely observing Deep Lightning Mountain began to withdraw due to this usual silence. However, only those who had access to privileged information knew that a storm was stealthily brewing. In the demon region, especially this extremely chaotic Beast War region, it was not an easy task to seek peace. Deep Lightning Mountain. Lin Dong sat on a rock on a quiet mountain behind. Majestic yuan power roamed around his body. It followed his breath, transforming into many chi dragons before they tunneled into his nostrils. Lin Dong's aura became increasingly calm as the yuan power poured into him. There seemed to be an endless ocean-like aura under this calmness. Swoosh! A rushing wind sound appeared some distance away. Subsequently, a familiar stocky body landed. Lin Dong opened his eyes before he saw Little Flame appearing beside him. During this period of time, Little Flame had managed to gradually gain control of Deep Lightning Mountain. In addition to his originally fearsome face, there was now a slightly authoritative aura. You should have settled all the issues within Deep Lightning Mountain, am I right? Lin Dong looked at Little Flame and smilingly asked. Although most of the great generals in Deep Lightning Mountain chose to submit after Xu Shong's death, there were still some powerful individuals who remained loyal to Xu Shong. Therefore, some chaos did break out during these 10 days. However, Little Flame completely eliminated these troublemakers swiftly and hardly any rumors emerged. With the help of Chen Tong's group, it was obvious that Deep Lightning Mountain was gradually falling under Little Flame's control. After all, the latter's reputation in Deep Lightning Mountain was only inferior to that of Xu Shong. Now that Xu Shong was dead, it was natural that Little Flame succeeded him. This was completely justified. After all, trying to snatch the position of another was not considered an overly repulsing deed in the demon region. This place worshipped strength above all else. If a commander's strength was inferior to that of his subordinate, it was only natural for him to be replaced by him. Little Flame nodded. He parted his lips and smiled. Meng Shan and General Qian Yi likely have some rebellious desires in their hearts. However, they will not dare to do anything for now. I will get Chen Tong's group to keep an eye on them. If they dare to show even the slightest hint of disloyalty, I will be able to eliminate them. Lin Dong nodded slowly. The Meng Shan duo were just some rat shit. It was troublesome to keep them, but it was also impossible to get rid of them openly. Hence, their best solution was to wait for the two of them to lose their patience. Of course, Lin Dong was not afraid of what they could do. After all, without Xu Shong backing them, it was difficult for those two to pose much of a threat to them. Big brother, how are your injuries? Little Flame looked at Lin Dong. The latter's condition had already completely recovered during this period of recuperation and he no longer appeared as frail as before. I'm fine. Lin Dong shook his head before he lowered his head to look at his fingers. It was only after he advanced to profound death stage that it became possible for him to use his body's essence blood and the ancestral stone to balance the powers between the thunderbolt ancestral symbol and the devouring ancestral symbol. Clearly, the strength of such an attack was exceptionally terrifying. However, combining the strength of the two great ancestral symbols was no joke. Unfortunately, this exhausted one's body far too greatly. On the other hand, you might be quite powerful, but you are likely the weakest amongst the current 8 great demon commanders. Lin Dong looked at Little Flame and remarked. Little Flame nodded. He might possess a mutated body, but he was still lacking in terms of development time when compared with those old monsters. Hence, he could only use some other methods to catch up. One example was the essence blood inheritance. Lin Dong looked at Little Flame's eyes, which were focused on him. He smiled and waved his sleeve. A burning sky furnace shot out and swelled rapidly. Subsequently, he moved and headed into the furnace. Follow me. It is time to retrieve the essence blood inheritance. An enormous dark greyish tiger corpse was floating in the burning sky furnace while a rich bloody smell spread from it. After Xu Shong died, his body once again returned to its original form. Lin Dong appeared in the air. Both his eyes narrowed as he stared at the dark greyish tiger corpse. Big brother, that inheritance essence blood has already been refined by Xu Shong. Can it still be retrieved? Little Flame followed Lin Dong. Then, he glanced at the huge tiger corpse and asked. It might be too difficult for others. Lin Dong smiled. He clenched his hand and a black swirl appeared. A mighty devouring power spread. Have you forgotten about my devouring ancestral symbol? Lin Dong flicked his finger as he spoke. The black swirl rushed out and appeared on the huge dark greyish tiger's body. A devouring power was emitted. It was like a huge mouth that swallowed the dark greyish tiger a bit at a time. The large dark greyish tiger gradually disappeared into the black hole. Around half an hour or so, it completely disappeared and not even a trace of flesh or bone remained. Hum. A black hole suddenly moved just as the dark greyish large tiger had vanished. Many extremely majestic and pure energy light pillars shot out from it. Looking from a distance away, it appeared like a resplendent, rising hot sun. When Lin Dong saw this sight, he clenched his hand before that black swirl turned into a black light and returned into his body. A human head-sized blood-colored ball appeared in mid-air. Currently, it was possible for Lin Dong to detect an extremely pure energy ripple within the blood-colored light ball. Blood lines lingered on the surface of the light ball and it looked like a bloody tiger that was roaring at the sky. It is indeed the other half of the essence blood inheritance. When Little Flame saw the blood-colored light ball, joy appeared on his face. Lin Dong gave a slight smile. Although this essence blood inheritance was completely refined by Xu Shong, it had only seeped into his flesh. Presently, Lin Dong had even refined his flesh. Hence, the essence blood inheritance was naturally squeezed out again. By relying on the strength of his devouring ancestral symbol, Lin Dong was able to extract the essence blood, unless it had completely merged with his actual body. Absorb the other half of the essence blood inheritance. There is a good chance that you can reach the perfect profound death stage. Lin Dong smacked his lips after he mentioned this point. He had trained bitterly, yet he was only at the initial profound death stage. However, Little Flame had already soared to the perfect profound death stage. Although this was partly due to his mutated body, it still made him feel unbalanced. However, Lin Dong quickly thought of his superior combat strength, which far outclassed his level, and felt a little pleased. It at least covered a bit of the gap. Lin Dong waved his hand after his voice sounded. The ball of blood light immediately fell before it was subsequently grabbed by Little Flame. However, a gasp of surprise was emitted from Little Flame's mouth just as he was about to refine it. Huh? Lin Dong lifted his head and looked at Little Flame. Little Flame grabbed the blood-colored light ball. He clenched it gently and it was possible to see a blood light rising from the blood-colored light ball. The light scattered a little at a time before it shrunk into the size of a palm, and a triangular ancient bronze piece appeared. The bronze piece was covered with a dark green color. It appeared like dirt left behind after the passage of time. It was vaguely possible to see two ancient words at the corner of the bronze piece. Item, treasure. Lin Dong glanced at it before he frowned. What was that? Little Flame rubbed this ancient bronze piece. He fondled his chin while appearing to be deep in thought. A long while later, his hand finally slammed heavily on the bronze piece. His tiger eyes contained an excited glow as he stared at Lin Dong. Big brother. I know what this is. Oh. Lin Dong lifted his brow. Little Flame parted his lips into a smile. Has Big Brother heard of the ancient divine item treasury? Ancient divine item treasury? Lin Dong narrowed his eyes. He was naturally quite familiar with ancient divine objects. After all, the ancestral stone in his body was ranked second on the ancient divine object ranking. Moreover, in order to deal with that Yimo King Qianming, Qingji had to use the 6th ranked item on the ancient divine object ranking, the King Destroying Heavenly Plate, before he was able to kill him. These ancient divine objects all possessed great powers, and in the hands of a formidable person, they were able to unleash a frightening strength. At times, it was even possible to kill an opponent at a higher level. Therefore, every ancient divine object would cause countless experts' eyes to turn red, as they fought over it. Yet, what was going on with this ancient divine item treasury? Based on what I know, there is an ancient divine item treasury in the Beast War region that was left behind from the ancient times. There are many ancient divine objects in that treasury and every one of them is extremely powerful. Little Flame parted his mouth and laughed. However, this ancient divine item treasury is jointly guarded by the 8 great demon commanders factions and it will only open once every 3 years. That period of time is also when the atmosphere in the Beast War region becomes the most heated. Even some factions that do not belong here will come and intervene in an attempt to gain a share. However, Little Flame paused before continuing. It seems like not everyone will successfully obtain an ancient divine object. Rumor has it that only a few factions managed to obtain an ancient divine object the last time the treasury opened. Moreover, amongst those divine objects, it seems like the most powerful one was a divine object called the 9 Sky Heavy Mountain. It is rumored to be ranked 32nd on the ancient divine object ranking. 9 Sky Heavy Mountain, Lin Dong muttered to himself. He was quite interested in these ancient divine items. Although the ancestral stone in his hand was ranked ridiculously high, it was currently unable to provide much of a boost to his fighting strength, because it suffered severe injuries during the Great War in the ancient times. At the very most, he was able to rely on its unique and gentle properties to maintain the equilibrium between the two great ancestral symbols in his body. Will everyone be able to obtain an ancient divine object when that treasury opens? Lin Dong asked. How is that possible? Little Flame shook his head. After which, he waved the ancient green-colored bronze tablet in his hand and said, if I am not mistaken, this should be the object that is the subject of the rumors spreading wildly amongst the big factions in the Beast War region, the ancient divine tablet. Ancient divine tablet? Lin Dong frowned. The ancient divine item treasury is quite mysterious and it seems to possess an extremely mysterious energy. One can only rely on the ancient divine tablet in order to pass through that energy barrier and obtain an ancient divine objects. Every time the ancient divine item treasury opens up, one ancient divine tablet will allow one to obtain one ancient divine object. One actually needs to rely on this thing to obtain a divine object. Lin Dong was a little startled. He took the triangular bronze piece from Little Flame's hand and gently estimated its weight. A strange heavy feeling was being felt on his hand. What did Xu Song obtain the previous time the ancient divine item treasury opened up? Why didn't he use it? Lin Dong asked in a somewhat puzzled manner. If Xu Song possessed such a powerful divine object, it was likely that Lin Dong would have a much more difficult time defeating him. Little Flame's expression was a little strange as he replied, this was because he had to turn it over to his superiors. Turned over to his superiors? Lin Dong was startled. Xu Song was one of the 8 great demon commanders. Yet, he had to hand over the divine objects he obtained to his superiors? Who did he hand it over to? Big brother, there are a total of 8 great demon commanders in the Beast War region. However, there is also a huge gap between the demon commanders. Xu Song is merely a demon commander who has risen in the past decade. Amongst the 8 demon commanders, there are 3 who have dominated the Beast War region for a few hundred years. Strictly speaking, they are considered as the strongest beings in the Beast War region. Up against those old monsters, even Xu Song had no choice but to submit to one of them. Little Flame said. Back then, out of those 3 demon commanders, Xu Song chose to submit to the Heaven Dragon demon commander. The divine object Xu Song that he obtained in the ancient divine item treasury was also gifted to the Heaven Dragon demon commander. Heaven Dragon demon commander. Lin Dong muttered to himself. He frowned and said, could it be that this esteemed demon commander is a member of the dragon tribe? TSK. He is merely an 8-winged dragon who possess bits of the dragon tribe's bloodline. Calling himself a heaven dragon is sheer arrogance. Little Flame curled his mouth and said, this time around, if I wasn't the one who took over Xu Song as the demon commander and the deep lightning mountain fell into the hands of an outsider, he might end up making a move. Nevertheless, I predict that it is only a matter of time before the Heaven Dragon demon commander comes knocking on our door. A worry flashed across Little Flame's eyes as he said, is that Heaven Dragon demon commander very powerful? Yes. Samsara stage strength. Little Flame nodded. Samsara stage her. Lin Dong curled his lips. Only then did he feel a great pressure. Although Xu Song is known to be extremely close to the Samsara stage, this one step was in reality an extremely huge gap. Otherwise, he would not have chosen to seek protection from the Heaven Dragon demon commander. Typically, one would have to pay a price in order to obtain protection from the Sky Dragon demon commander. Xu Zhong had to offer the divine object he obtained from the ancient divine item treasury to the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander for 3 times. Only after that will he be able to keep the divine objects. However, the ancient divine item treasury only opens every 3 years. In other words, Xu Zhong had to help the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander for nearly 10 years. If we count the time, it seems like this exact amount of time has passed. Unfortunately, he is no longer able to enjoy those divine objects. Little Flame spoke with a smile. How many ancient divine tablets are there? Lin Dong waved the bronze piece in his hand and asked. Based on what I know, there are 13 of them. The 3 great demon commanders amongst the 8 demon commanders own 2 each. The remaining 5 demon commanders have 1 each. There are 2 other powerful factions in the Beast War region who owns the remaining 2. Although they are not as powerful as the demon commanders, one should not underestimate them either. Little Flame replied. In other words, each time the ancient divine item treasury is opened, 13 divine objects will appear in this world. Lin Dong was slightly amazed. This treasury was actually this formidable? Just 1 divine object alone would incite countless individuals to fight over it. Even less needed to be said when 13 of them appeared together. Ordinary divine objects are not overtly rare. They are not like those found on the ancient divine object ranking. Strictly speaking, they are not a lot stronger than your Lightning Emperor scepter. A voice suddenly sounded within Lin Dong's heart while he was feeling secretly startled. It belonged to Yang. This fellow, who was ranked 2nd on the ancient divine object ranking, clearly held great authority when it came to such matters. Lin Dong choked because of Yang's words. He spoke in his heart in a somewhat depressed manner. I have no choice, since the 2nd-ranked divine object in my hand is of little use even up till now. Cough. Yang coughed dryly. It was aware that it could not provide much help to Lin Dong, in terms of his offensive capabilities. After all, the damage it suffered back then was far too severe. Of course, you can still make a trip to the ancient divine item treasury. However, other than an extremely small number of divine objects, most of them are hardly spectacular. However, the treasury itself is a decent divine object. You mean, the ancient divine item treasury itself? Lin Dong felt slightly startled. Was that also a divine object? Yes. If my guess is right, it should be the 10th ranked item on the ancient divine object ranking, the mysterious Heaven Hall, Yang replied. Mysterious Heaven Hall. Lin Dong once again appeared extremely lost. It is also something made by my owner back then. You should know that we needed a lot of equipment in order to wage a full-scale war with the Yimo. This mysterious Heaven Hall is an ultimate divine object that can manufacture divine objects on its own. All one had to do is to throw the required ingredients inside and the mysterious Heaven Hall will naturally refine it. After which, one can equip one's army and assemble a powerful fighting force. Of course, these mass-produced items naturally cannot be compared with those on the ancient divine object ranking. However, they cannot be underestimated as well because of their large numbers. Moreover, other than its ability to refine, this mysterious Heaven Hall also possesses a sealing ability. If its full strength is activated, even an Yimo king will have difficulties escaping after being caught in it. It must be said that the mysterious Heaven Hall played an important role during the Great World War. It is actually able to refine and create divine objects on its own. Lin Dong involuntarily nodded in a stunned fashion. This ancient divine item treasury, or rather mysterious Heaven Hall, was truly formidable. Ha-he. You can give it a go. If you manage to obtain the mysterious Heaven Hall, it will definitely be of a great help to you. An excited glint flashed across Lin Dong's eyes. Disregarding its ability to create divine objects, just the ability to seal an Yimo king was sufficient to rouse Lin Dong's desire. After all, this was an extremely difficult step for him to accomplish with his current strength. How long before the ancient divine item treasury opens again? Lin Dong lifted his head, looked at Little Flame and asked. Let me see, the ancient divine item treasury should open again in approximately 2 to 3 months' time. I finally realized why Qin Shi wanted Xu Shong's corpse. He is actually after the ancient divine tablet in Xu Shong's body. By doing so, he would be able to obtain 2 divine objects the next time the ancient divine item treasury opens. One of them will be surrendered to those above him, while the other will be kept by him. Little Flame smacked his lips together and commented. Lin Dong nodded. He felt that Qinsha was acting strangely that day. It turns out the latter was after this. Big brother, are you also interested in the ancient divine item treasury? Little Flame asked. It will be quite beneficial for us if we are able to obtain 1 to 2 divine items. Lin Dong smiled. He waved his hand downwards and said, before this, however, you must refine this essence blood inheritance. Otherwise, we will be unable to compete with those vicious fellows. I? Little Flame nodded heavily. He also knew that there were many powerful individuals eyeing the ancient divine item treasury. Hence, it was no easy task for them to obtain a share of the loot. With a wave of his sleeve, both of them shot out from the burning sky cauldron. Little Flame did not linger on after having obtained the essence blood inheritance. They chatted for a short while before he hurriedly proceeded to go into cultivation seclusion to refine it. Lin Dong smiled upon seeing Little Flame's anxious demeanor. Meanwhile, his palms gently rubbed the ancient divine tablet in his hand. Ancient divine item treasury, huh? I am quite interested in you. This video will end here.